No time for an introduction. Let's go ahead and get into it. Today we're going to be talking about Richard Gilbert. Today's story was suggested by you guys, in particular Shay Denise. Make sure you guys thank her in the comments. Now, one thing I do need to let you guys know, there is a major trigger warning in this story. And because it's dealing with, like a baby, if you're, you know. Also, there are some discrepancies in the story that I am going to address at the end of the story. So make sure you guys stick to the end. So let's go ahead and get into it. Back in the 80s, you had Richard Gilbert. He was effeminate. He was a gay man. He liked to cross dress and he worked at a salon. Now, somewhere along the line, he met this dude. We'll call him Jack. I can imagine they met like this.
Listen to these tracks, bitch. Got the way you moving, got me in a trance. DJ turn me up, ladies get so jammed. I'm a Moscato.
Hey. You mean me? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you, I thought you were gorgeous.
You like me?
Oh, that's so sweet. I know you can't tell due to my girly beard and everything, but I'm not like most of the vagina-having girls around here. I'm just not... I like my women how I like my men. With a penis.
So now, Richard and Jack, they started messing around with each other. And Richard fell in love. Now, Jack was bisexual. And he was messing with this girl on the side. We'll call her Rose. And Rose came around with that hot spit on that thing. And he fell in love. She came through and threw that ass in a circle. And Jack found a new love. So much so that she got pregnant. Now, when Jack got Rose pregnant, he was like, you know what? I got to get my life together. You know this back in the 80s. You got somebody pregnant, you had to marry him. So Jack goes to Richard. And as you can guess, that conversation was kind of deep. I can imagine it went something like this.
I will stand with you between the heavens and the earth. I will tell you where you are. Do you love me?
I love you! From the moment I saw you trying to go over the wall, I have loved you desperately. I cannot breathe when you are not near. I love you, Charlotte.
But despite that, he was like, I got a family now. Peace, bruh. And Richard did not like this. Not at all. So that's when Richard started concocting a plan. He started to get really close with Jack and Rose and the baby, pretending like everything was okay and he had moved on with their life. And they became like a friend group. So much so that they were entrusting Richard to babysit their child. Now we lead into the question of, did Rose know about Jack and Richard? Now, Richard was obviously, he was a cross-dresser, so obviously she knew that he was a man in a wig. I'm not sure if she knew about their previous relationship. I would think so because, Jack was there. But I'll speculate this a little more later on in the story. Let's keep it moving. Richard was so spiteful that he got a baby monitor and he started recording the baby making its normal everyday sounds, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Now, one day, Jack and Rose decided that they want to go to the movies, and guess who'd be the best babysitter in the world? Richard. I'm going to pause right here to address a little discrepancy. Most of this story is not available for public knowledge. The age of the story and the fact that he was in part of the LGBT community, there really isn't a whole lot of information and research that you can find available online. So I'm deriving a lot of this story from this guy. Supposedly, he was in jail and he knew Richard, and this is the story that Richard told him. I suggest you go to his channel so you can check out from what he says happened. Which his story is a little different from the information available online from reputable news sources. So I'm going to tell you his version and then I'm going to tell you what I think actually happened. On the day Jack and Rose decided they want to go to the movies, they actually gave the baby to Richard so Richard could babysit. Now, this was the day that Richard decided that he was going to go through with his plan. So he called Jack up while he already had the baby. He called Jack up and was like, hey, before you go to the movies, come over. I'll cook a little dinner, and we'll just chill before you go to the movies with Rose. So Jack came over, and when he came over to the house, he was like, hey, where's my baby? And he was like, the baby's fine. He was playing the baby sounds with the baby monitor. Remember, he was recording the baby? So they sat down at the table. Richard goes and gets Jack's plate. He sits on the table. Then he goes and get a pot of spaghetti. Remember that trigger warning, I'm finna let you guys know. He gets the spaghetti to the table, he opens the top of the spaghetti and goes, dinner is served. And the baby was in the pot. That's when Jack loses his shit and screams a scream out of all screams. Something that Richard noted that to this day, he can still hear those screams in his head. Although during court, he really acted like he didn't care about the whole thing. He was no emotions. That's the gist of the story that's coming from the other channel. However, this story doesn't make quite a lot of sense to me, so I'm going to tell you what I think happened based on the information that's available online, which isn't a whole lot. Here's what I think happened. Jack and Rose were getting ready to go out on a date. Jack was already communicating with Richard to bring the baby over. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to bring the baby, leave, and then he say, hey, come back for dinner, and then he comes back, unless the baby was with him all day, and that just doesn't quite make a lot of sense. So he brought the baby over to Richard's house. While he was there, they had planned on eating at that time, and probably do a little something. You know, spit on that thing. Even if they didn't do it, it was probably a conversation that was happening at that point. And Richard was kind of telling him that he wanted him back, he wanted him to leave, or he wanted something more than whatever he had going on with him. And when Jack said no, Richard got a pot of boiling water and threw it on the baby. All the news sources, even Justicia, said that it was just a pot of water. So I don't know if it was spaghetti or maybe he was getting ready to make spaghetti and the water was boiling, but he threw that on the baby. Also, according to the other story, the baby would have been inside the pot already. And if Jack didn't hear the baby screaming, that would imply the baby was... But according to news sources, and there are pictures, you can go and find the baby was alive after the incident. Burned from, about the chest down, but it was alive. Which wouldn't quite make sense if he was in a pot of spaghetti and no one heard him. He would have been deceased. But that makes sense if the baby was alive when Jack got there and then he threw water on the baby then. And then immediately got help. This is just me thinking, Also, just based on regular media, there is no mention that they knew him prior to, that they knew that he was transsexual, that Jack ever had a relationship with Richard. There's no mention of none of this. With that being said, I'm not saying that he's lying. I'm not even saying that he's mistaken. I'm pretty sure that's what Richard would have told him. I think Richard's lying. So definitely go check it out from his channel if you guys want to hear what he was told. Also, before we're done here, check out this little clip.
An hour to decide punishment for Richard Gilbert. The 29-year-old transvestite showed no emotion as the jury foreman read the sentence. Prosecutor Ryder Scott called Gilbert a despicable human being. What Gilbert really deserves, said Scott, is a special place in hell.
We think that the jury made the right decision, and we think that Dallas is a safer place.
Gilbert was convicted of an incident that happened 3 months after Gilbert began babysitting for the infant.
I hope other mothers and fathers who have their children in the care of other people, that they have carefully checked everything that they can. You cannot do enough checking.
Rest in peace to the baby, prayer to the family, and burn in hell, Richard. This is crazy, right?